It is with great pleasure and honor that I introduce a dynamic speaker who's going to lecture to us and going to inform us concerning the all great Moabite Moorish woman, the science of the number 9, the matriarch of the human family. I'm going to introduce to you without further delay Brother Taj Tarik Bey.
Islam, thank you. Islam, Moors.
Islam.
First I want to open up, be casual and comfortable, but I want to bring a point up. In many areas of organization, you'll see us dealing with what we call family problems and social problems, economic problems, political problems, rights issues. Very often people talk the subject matters dealing with the symptoms. Rarely will they go to the cause, the root, because the root commands a change, not only with those that they're complaining about, but also with themselves. So we're going to deal today with the applied science of the number 9, which is one of the most ancient lessons of civilization on the planet Earth. It deals with the matriarchy because that is the foundation of civilization, period, on the planet Earth. There's no such thing as ancient civilization when you talk about patriarchy. It's a fraud. We also know that when people go into so-called Asiatic African history, they will usually go into it with a patriarchal mind. Automatically, the mental is polarized because it's out of harmony with truth and with nature. In other words, like this. If you got a seed and you want to grow some crop, you throw it up in the air and have a balloon or something just holding air so it can get some air and it's going to give you some crop, or do you plant it in the earth?
Plant it in the earth.
Plant it in the earth. Why? Because the earth is a womb. And if you want anything to learn, to grow, to gestate, and to come to fruition in the physical form, it must have a womb. That includes the thought, doesn't it? Isn't the thought a seed? Isn't a seed an egg? Isn't the mind a womb? So there's a feminine principle in nature that we've been ignoring, not that we didn't know about it, but because we've been made patriarchal in our mentality to the masculine principle being the superior I, i.e. God, which is a fraud. Men need not be, how would you say, threatened by truth, but they should embrace truth. Recognize, like you can have, if you have daughters or sons, right? Say you got a daughter and she's 13, 14 years old, and you got a son about 17. Mentally, they're about equal. Because women are always faster than men. Why? Because they're the first being here. Because every male has a mother. And every female has herself, her mother. And every egg is female. It's not disputable. So what came first, the chicken or the egg? They're both females. What's your argument? So you must understand nature. If you want to understand nature, you must understand nature and how things are done to understand yourself. And so if you're going to know yourself, you must acknowledge first your origin. Your birthmark, universal, is the navel. Nave implies water and navigation. Il means God. So navigating gods. And so your birthmark is a navel. Universally. It's not a strawberry, it's not a mole on your back with a hair growing out of it. It's a navel. Universal. Principally, all ancient civilizations were matriarchal. Matriarchal means government run primarily by women. Because in our time now, because we're living and we're speaking now, we relate mostly to what we know or what we've been told. And so we've been living under patriarchal systems and have no reference point, simply because books have been burned by the Christians. Literature has been burned. Artifacts have been hidden, and some that were very revealing were dumped in the middle of the ocean so that you couldn't figure this thing out. Then you were jealously protected from outsiders giving you any information. Back to what you were saying. The issue, before we go into some points about woman and using her tools, going back to the principles of our ancient fathers, you must understand the caveats. This is back to even some things that we're discussing, even with the children, babies, the birth certificate, etc. So before we talk about the birth certificates, you must know about what is the instruments that cause them or gives them the ability to make this claim of bond in the first place. So the first thing that you should be aware of is the Christian Black Codes of 1724, correct? You're aware of them, right? The 54 articles, right? Came from the church. You're aware of that, right?
No.
You're not?
Into this.
Well, let's go back a little further. Constantine the Great. Flavius Valerius Constantinus, the Roman ruler, emperor, and the authorizer and the authority of the founding, adoption, proliferation, and the propagation of the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed for Roman rulership on the planet Earth. That Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed of Constantine was established over a series of years with the first major council of bishops coming together, 325 AD. Do you have an idea what that date means? 325 AD. Do you know what AD represents?
After Christ.
They tell you that. AD means Anno Domini, after domination.
Oh.
All right.
Anno Domini.
Anno Domini. After domination. Well, who were they dominating? But you know, we don't even go there right now. What they tell you is after they lynched the Nazarene and started altering the records. So now the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed was drafted and established in its first form, not complete, 325 years after the Romans assassinated Yeshua ben Yosef, who they transliterated in the text as Jesus, after Zeus, the Roman god. And that name is translated into coarse Anglican language, Jesus, which is not the prophet's name, not the name his mother gave him, not the name he did his work in, not the name he went to the grave in. His name is Yahushua. People who do not understand Hebrew or the language, excuse me just a second, Islam. Now, you know that the average people out here are people, being sincere, think that Yeshua's name is Jesus, right? And they think, and a lot of them know it. All the preachers know it. They learn it when they get their ordination papers. Except most of them are Masons, and they take a blood oath of death not to reveal the secrets, because the church will collapse. But they know his name is Yahshua, right? However, they will never confess it publicly, because they're trading a few pieces of silver to keep our people enslaved for their Roman masters, who ordained them. But they tell the people that God ordained them, implying the Creator God, though the state is their God. Right now, we're going to go back to that when we talk about the marriage license too. That's where their allegiance really are. And so the thing is, the illusion is, most of the people that you trust with your babies, with yourself, with your life, are actually the vampires. This is the darkness. This is the illusion. Because what you think is not. A lot of people you think is your enemy, but you think some of the Europeans are your enemy. Some of them are your friends. Some of the people look like you that you trust is your enemy. So you must understand spirituality to really tell that.
That's right.
Although you may not trust those forms, every European is not your enemy. Adam is Aton, Eve is evolution. And Allah is woman herself, you. God of the planet. Now that's the truth. Now, though people can't handle that, it's only politically they can't handle that. But nature doesn't have any mercy on your ignorance. I bet you can't show me a man that's on this planet, including somebody called Adam, that don't have a belly button. So there's no debate. And he got 2 buttons up here that don't work. Ain't fed nothing. But they're there to remind him of his origin. And that does not lie, does it?
No.
Does it? However, believers will lie and say that's not so. You've never seen a man exist on this planet that got a chest that's totally smooth. He got inactive glands there. Don't feed, nothing. So you're going to talk about a God you can't see and don't recognize the brothers and sisters you see every day? Then you're a liar. And there's a price to pay for that. It's not because I said so or anyone else says so, because nature says so. And you mess with her, you got it coming. Because she doesn't play. And you can call her Allah, Yahweh, Jehovah, Parabrahms. Guess what? It's still all feminine. Messiah. Yes, she come back even if she sends a son. It's still her. So you gotta really understand how this thing works. It may be uncomfortable because of what you thought you knew based on what somebody told you belief-wise. You understand what I'm saying? Now, you look at little sister there, right? This is fine. Look at little sister there. Right now, she has a nation right inside of her right now. She comes here with eggs already in her. And they're all female. Every last one of them. Male eggs do not exist in nature. Fact. See that throne? You see this throne? That's an egg. You see those signs around that throne? Around her crown? That's the 12 disciples, or the 12 signs, 12 constellations. See that crescent of the star? Is that 9 and that 13? 9 is the 9 cosmic months of man's birth. 13 is the cycle of the moon around the earth, while the earth revolves around the sun. And she cycles 13 times to bring a form here. Whether she brings it or not at the same time, that's the height of her spiritual connection to the cosmos. But religionists will call her dirty, to steal her power. If she knows herself, she knows that's when she's most spiritual. But whatever her state of mind is, so is the atmosphere out here, whether she brings a physical form or not. So therefore, if she's out of order, we're out of order. And we can't get in order until she's in order. Not that we can't make the effort. Don't misunderstand me. It's not an issue of not taking responsibility. It's an issue of understanding who God really is. God is a generic term. But when we talk about the Supreme, or the Allah, Allah is a feminine name. However, truth makes people uncomfortable because we have been steeped into a patriarchal system by the popes of Rome. All right? Now, the popes of Rome, you have what is known in the Roman emperor's table, the Franciscan Brotherhood. And it's a body or groups, just like you say think tanks, of Roman bishops, cardinals, etc. Whether you want to call them the Jesuits or others, irrespective. Their mission is to conquer the world. They murdered all the prophets. The blood of the prophets are on their hands. But they finally got you. Finally got you. They know that there's no way that they can rule the world without your cooperation. This is why it was very important that when they finally colonized the Maghreb, Marrakesh, that you call America, that's Maghreb el-Aqsa. Maghreb el-Aqsa is Morocco, the extreme west. And so they told you that it's over there. And you believed them. And you disconnected from the land. And they claimed it. Are you seeing what's happening? To preserve the energies and the resources for themselves, they needed to claim the greatest resource here. So the general concept that they would give you in education is that the resources is gold and silver and all this commerce, right? They know that the greatest resource is the people. And so the state, corporations, India Company, Pacific, Africa Company, were all called companies until 1800s. This was late. This wasn't earlier, as they implied to you. It wasn't until really early into the mid-1800s that they start calling these corporations states. And then start claiming the lands, as you were talking about earlier. And so the people start thinking that the state is the land. States are private, imitation, artificial, corporate entities. Fictions on paper. So they could claim your child is important, that if the dragon is waiting for that child to be born before they can devour it, if you're in your right mind, you can take them out of here. Do you understand? But if you're in your warped mind, all the dragon needs to do is wait for the child to be born, and then you deliver it. And then they devour the child. And then they file a bond on that child that they gave birth to that child. And so they would list that child as a corporate entity that exists by virtue of sanction from the state. So the certificate of that institution would be birth certificate, state of New Jersey, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, etc. And the being would be listed in all capital letters, which means a corporate entity, and it would be filed as such. And they would sign their name to that chattel. Therefore, they would have first authority or jurisdiction over the being. So the being would have a Roman name. Remember this, Roman means European nations collectively as one. Does not mean the city in Italy. Romans means the Albion or the Gaelic, Gothic, Frankish part of the human family. The Franks. Do you understand? Whether you're saying German, French, English, etc. All of those are contemporary, political, tribal, designated jurisdictions of the extensions of the same people. Do you understand? It's a tribe of Albions who we placed there that broke up into political families, formed for themselves political families. Do you hear me? So don't get caught up in the fiction of thinking that a German and a Frenchman is different in the concept that you thought it was. The mission is still one. So ultimately, while they may have political arguments or political differences, ultimately everyone operates for the empire. Now do you understand colonialism? And why when they colonized Maghreb, they all agreed to oath to claim white party status. Because they could not be free white persons. Are you following me? They were not free white persons or called white persons until mid-1800s. So when you see documents that refer to Europeans as white people prior to 1800, it's fraud. It's a lie. It's made retroactive. No different than when you see these Moors referred to as black or Negro people made retroactive in history. It is a fraud that goes past early 1800s. Absolute fraud. Are you following me?
Yes.
For the Romans to rule in the Maghreb, they needed a code of rules of law because all of the Moors did not succumb or convert. Some of them fought, went into the mountains. Some of them went into the swamps. The Europeans start calling them different tribal names that are usually corruptions of ancient Algonquian names, like Cherokee, Blackfoot, Seminole, Nanaco, etc. They're all tribes of Moors. Now, for your information, so that we can clear this up, and this is another point too that I want to make, and brother, this is another point that I know your book is done. However, it might be good for you, since it's not totally published yet, that you might use this in a certain part because of your, your degrees that you got in what they call Indian studies. How did the Moors become called in North America Indians? Is it generally known amongst you? If anyone knows, raise your hand. Let me tell you. See this tassel here? Now mine's a little red, but it's originally black, and I've had a lot of these, and every time I buy one, they turn red. I don't know why. They do. All my tassels turn red, so I just stopped changing them. But the dye that is used to dye these tassels is called indigo. And it's from a berry that's found strictly in Morocco. Are you following me? Also, you ever heard, like when they talk about a lot of the Moors, like in the islands and in the south areas of Mexico, and they talk about some parts of our ancient religious rituals, and they call it voodoo? Yeah. You know where it come from? Do you know where it come from? That's a miscorruption of a word, Hindu. Do you know where that comes from? It comes from Hindi. You know where that comes from? That comes from a place called Peru. Do you know geographically where Peru is? Peru is just below Tianyi, that you call China. It's not China, it's Tianyi. Peru is just below Tianyi, and you know it today as India. India is not India, and those people are not Indians. They are Moabite and Hittites. Moabite and Hittites. 3 major dynasties made up that astrological Sanskrit powerful culture that you know in Peru and Tibet, etc. area. Those dynasties are, and take your time so you can write this down, the Mauryan dynasty, the Nanda dynasty, and the Gupta dynasty. All of those dynasties are ancient Moabite Moorish dynasties. And it is the Moors who named Peru Hindustan. And this is where the name for Peru become Hindustan. And that's a few thousand years ago. Now, Hindustan, due to corruption in European sociology, as Europeans have been conquering Asia and Africa, called them Hindis and Hindus, where the name Indian came from, which is a fiction. And if you think that what I just said to you is untrue, talk to a Hindustani on the line that I just talked to you and watch them confirm it. And some will be surprised that you knew. How did you find out? Also, you got to remember that the Moors controlled the spice trade, the gold, etc., 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 because the Moors governed the planet, ruled the 7 continents and the 7 seas. Now we're going to cut part of the history and just go to certain points that you're familiar with, so that you can relate to what I'm saying. You know the story of Columbus? They tell you about Columbus sailed the ocean through the ordeal. And after they defeated the Moors in 1492, Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand merged their kingdoms and funded his voyage to the west. Well, the voyage to the west, pay attention to that, the voyage to the west is the voyage to the Maldives. When you study European history, you study from the Battle of Tours near Poitiers, France, back to the Crusades, back to the Punic Wars, etc., which is a series of the same wars, actually. For the most part, you think of what you call medieval history and late European history, because the Europeans used that year, 1492, as the pivotal year, or as the Axis year, to distinguish ancient and modern history. Why? Because 1492 is the political year that is recognized as the final of the Moors, even though they weren't totally collapsed. That's the general year they used to recognize the fall of the ancient empires. And now, what they call European beginnings, when Christendom began to dominate the world. It was not till the Moors fell that the rest of the Asiatic nations fell. They had no chance, because it's the Moors who are also referred to as Turks. So don't get confused, think that Turkey and Moors is different people. When the Christians refer us to as the Moors and Turks, keeping them in check, they're all Moors. They just did that to divide you so that you couldn't trace your history down. Charles the Hammer, his name is Charles Martel, M-A-R-T-E-L. That's European history. So you're going to go to European history also to get your history. Because understand, when you're dealing with Moorish history, you're dealing with world history. You're not dealing with the fiction of what they call black history restricted to some slave period in North America. Black history is strictly slave history, strictly. When you're talking about civilization, you go to the Moors, because those are our forefathers before enslavement. That's when we ruled. Our people will talk about kings and queens, but they'll never go to the history in the right frame of mind. They will take the black and then retroactively attach it to the civilized world. It doesn't attach. It's two different statuses. When you say black to the civilized world, they know that those are slave products. People who are the products of chattel operations. Has nothing to do with sovereignty. Has nothing to do with authority. Has nothing to do with self-rule, self-governance. It indicates a person denationalized, a person who is outside of the human family, a person who has no standing at law, a person who's not considered organic, but considered corporate, even though it lives. You understand that? So politically, when you see those terms used or written, that's what it means, not what you may assume that it means. So you must seriously understand why the issue is important, even when they list that thing on documents, including that birth certificate. Because they cannot list the person. And remember, keep this in mind too, because it's important for you to know this. There's two types of person at law. Write that down. If you forget this, you're in trouble. If you forget this, you're in trouble. Two types of person at law. When you see, read, or hear from any legal perspective or process in government or history that says person, unless it says natural person, it means corporation or artificial person. Are we clear? This is important so that you know how to deal with documentation received and given. Are we clear? Because I don't want anyone to get past this.
Can you repeat that again?
There are two types of person at law. The word person, when given to you in legal jargon or in written form or documentation or in operations of government, it means automatically, in most instances, a corporation. You don't know that, not that you couldn't know it, because it's not taught to people. Because the U.S. corporation is a slave state, and they have a language to fit it. This is so that slaves don't rebel, because they don't know what's going on. No different than the average person didn't know that the birth certificate and the marriage certificates are bonds against them. You see what I'm saying to you? So just like you didn't know that, you also may not have known that the language that was given to you was designed for you to agree orally to your chattel enslavement through legal processes. Do you see what I'm saying? And when they give you documentations or present an instrument to you for you to sign and to agree, they represent it as something else when it's actually a bond for the world stock market. Do you understand? Now, if they list your baby in the corporate status, they're not violating international law, are they? Technically. So basically that creates what is known legally a straw, or a man of straw. So you write that down, man of straw. And you will look this up in your law dictionary and your unabridged dictionaries and cross-reference it in other unabridged dictionaries. So you got to know how you got where you are so you know how to get out of it, or how to deal with it. All right? Are you following me? And if you don't understand, don't hesitate to say, because I want to make sure when you leave here you have some working information, not just hearing me run my big mouth. So do you understand that there's two types of person? What is the organic person?
The natural person.
What is the corporate person? Person. So when they say a person must, and you think it means you, then they trick you and you sign a contract, now you're bond. Now the law becomes the violation of the contract, and you thought it was the law. No, they're suing you for breach of contract.
I understood what you just said. Person means automatically corporation, unless it specifies natural person.
Yes.
I got lost dealing with man of straw. As far as I
Man of
understood
straw
of the
is the fiction that they create to place the debt against. In other words, like what she was talking about earlier, you know, when her husband made an affidavit, and he has not yet filed it, but he made an affidavit, but they did accept the corporate state. What corporate state is that filing under? Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, what?
have no idea. Because he just started to file the paperwork.
All right, well, don't file them yet. Not if it's theirs. You're going to have to make your own. We'll get back to you later and tell you some things. Not right now. But if you got that certificate from them,
Yes.
they got a bond on you. They got a bond on you. Yes, they do. So even if you did some other things, they got a bond on you. See, what you must not do, this is why, again, certain things must be taught to our people to bring them back into governmental principles so that you understand certain responsibilities from a civil matter, or certain civil matters already reside with you. But because our people have been held out of government so long, for so many generations, and then overseers were placed amongst our people to convince them that the 14th Amendment Negro stock was a reality, and that civil rights that went with it was a reality. That's fictional. That comes from the Christian Black Codes of 1724. To solidify the corporate person for the states, their agents. You ever notice that when certain agents say to you, by the power vested in me by the state of New Jersey, I pronounce you man and wife? They're state agents. But they tell the people that they were ordained by the Creator, didn't they? And that there's a separation of church and state, didn't they? But the average person, because they deal with beliefs, not facts, never even notice it, do they? They got the mentality of boys and girls. Now you see why civilized people call them boys and girls? And when they do that, then they get mad, they want to burn things, don't they? But they are boys and girls. That's why they call it minority. Most people think that minority means numbers, don't they? It means mental state. Legally, it means mental state. And so you have grown men and women transacting business in alien names and talking about their own things. See the problem? They don't even own their own offspring, who've been bonded away. So they think bondage is a chain. Bondage is that document. They're bonds. They're flesh bonds. See, so this enslavement for the colonists was bureaucratized, and they formulated corporations to deal with their stock investments. That's what the 14th Amendment person is. That's why as soon as you agree that you're Negro, Black, and colored, you come under certain codes and you don't know what's happening to you, but that's what happens to you. An ignorant person calls it prejudice. A person who knows law calls it birthright theft. Because that's what it is. And you always have the right to do what? To reclaim the honor of your mothers and your fathers. But if you don't want to honor your mothers and fathers, that's your right too, isn't it? Huh? So if you've been transacting business in alien names, and then you go vote in them names and they tear up the vote because it ain't going the way they want to, should you be upset? No. An intelligent person wouldn't, but an ignorant person would be upset because they think that that vote belongs to them, don't they? Huh? So if the dog comes around filing elephant votes, and then somebody comes along, elephants, tear up the votes because they ain't going the way they want to, and then the dogs call the elephants prejudice. Who's at the lunch?
The dog.
Oh, all right. So you got all these Asiatic Africans saying they Smith, Jones, Johnson, and Frankenstein, and they talk about freedom. It's an oxymoron. That don't go together. We talk about legal. We're not talking about their emotions. Are you seeing? So any documents that are filed on behalf of such persons automatically becomes under the wardship of the state corporation. And that entity is treated as corporate property. It's called chattel. Isn't that simple breakdown? It's not complicated, is it? Is it? And once you understand it, you can understand your own concept that how you should start thinking on how to undo it. It's not complicated, is it? But if you don't look at it for what it actually is, it seems daunting. It may appear complicated when it's really not. It's just being yourself. It's because you can't transact business claiming to be someone else and not commit a fraud on your own part. And if you commit a fraud on your own part, you can't turn around and charge somebody else with a fraud and then sue them for it. You see the difficulty that so-called black people have getting reparations? I said so-called black people. Because it can't happen, because no such people exist on the planet Earth. If there's anybody on the planet Earth who's designated Negro, black, and colored, it is already filed in the records of civilization as property of European families who colonized North America. And if you trace them, you can find a European name that they themselves will write and say it's them. So can that being turn around, come before a free court, before the civilized world, and command freedoms or the rights of international law for that security of that being? Cannot happen. Now you understand the Dred Scott case? Plaintiff in error. And scholars keep talking racism when that is not really the issue. It's a diversion. Plaintiff is in error, claiming to be Scots and Englishmen, or Welshmen. So you got an Asiatic claiming to be Englishman, but talking about he's free from the Englishmen. You cannot dishonor your mothers and your fathers and then claim freedom, because your inheritance is in the mother and the father's names of your forefathers. And that's where the nations of the planet Earth put their trust. And so if there's any bond of honor or any covenant of honor, and you transact business in an alien name, don't talk about law, don't talk about justice, because the position is no judicio standi, no standing at law. Of course, out of ignorance, we would call it racism. Because we've been taught that, because they don't want you to figure out what really it is so you don't fix it. So even the one doing it to you will promote racism. You see the point? It's to their economic advantage. Do you see? And so when we're speaking with people on these issues, because they may give what appears to be a reasonable conversation, we can get fooled into thinking that they're trying to work something out. It is no problem at all, because math is one all over the planet. 1 and 1 is what? 2. 2 and 2 is what? 4. Uno. Dos. It doesn't matter. You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't change. Because truth don't change or pass away. Beliefs come and go. Because they're not founded in truths. They're founded in emotion. So there's instability there, isn't it? And the root word in belief is lie. Do you understand? So when you deal with science and proper instruction, it has always been from ancient times to present that you begin with belief, because that's the state of mind of a child. It is not wrong. It's called evolution and development. And when you give a child something to look at, the child, because it has senses, sight, taste, smell, touching, and hearing, which are all sights. Collectively, it is a common sight that is called common sense, the highest science known to man. That science is used to gather information and to do what? Correlate that information into realities and confirmations. When you're in the first stages of development, it is not as sharp, although it is more pure. Not as sharp. So distinctions are less apt to be of issue. The child then just gathers. Just right now it's gathering. You see? And so because of that state of mind, we call it a minor. You following me? But the rules don't change. The truth don't change or pass away. When the child gets a little older, then it comes from belief to faith. And remember, this is a trinity of steps. Triune principle. And faith is when it has a little bit of understanding of what the child believed. It can discern and distinguish certain things, although not yet mastered. Then the last step is fruition. And fruition is when the being and the truth becomes one. Then the child is a man or a woman and no longer needs the childish things, and he puts them away. Doesn't cast them in the dirt. It's just saved for the next children. So a grown being is not supposed to be a believer of anything. However, if you tell people that right out, they'll think that you're attacking Allah, that you're attacking the prophets, that you have no respect for divine order. But it's only said out of ignorance. Then you understand the condition of the world, why it's in the condition it's in. But it's that way because those who have been ruling taught them that, to rob them, because they're money changers. You get the point? Because they're stealing your birthright. So therefore, the baby, right now, you're what she knows. And her daddy is what she knows. There's, she's starting to explore a little bit, but you're the center of her universe right now, right? And then when she gets 1.5, she's going to start testing the waters a little bit. And she gets 2, she gets pretty confident, because they're very sharp, right? Then they're going to start looking for little exercises of independence. They're not going to be independent for quite some while. They're going to start exercising. These are cycles, right? And so when the child's not sure, she's going to be holding on to stuff when she's trying to walk. And while she's going to take a couple steps, bump her head a little bit, That's why she's going to be confident, and she'll start looking at longer distance and start getting herself together and run across the room, grab something, oh, got this. After a while, you're going to be telling her to sit down. Right? And after a while, she's not going to think about walking, she's just going to get up and walk. Then she's going to be running. Hey, it ain't no big thing. Same thing with knowledge. It's evolutionary process. That's Eve. You see? So knowledge of the atmosphere, the knowledge of the planet, the knowledge of the energies, knowledge of the elements, and how they function together in relationship to your body, to yourself, and a knowledge of the chemical compound makeup of all of those energy that you call body salts, etc. That's religion, the study of that. And your relationship to the divine order. And everything else they've been giving people thereafter is a lie. That's why everybody's hating each other and shedding each other's blood for their idol gods that somebody gave them. Do you understand? Because every other living thing is your brother and sister. If you understand this thing properly. And then there is no debate. Not because you believe anything, because you stop being a little child. And someone doesn't come to you and say, well, sis, can you say your ABCs? And you go, let me see. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then you start getting a rhythm with it because you got it now, right? Well, I expect that of the baby when she's, 2, 3, but not of you. I want to see some sentences from you. You see the point? So when you're a child, you say, I think that God loves me. And they said, yes, Jesus loves you and Allah loves you and stuff like that. But when you're grown and someone's still playing that game with you, they're a charlatan and you're a dunce. However, most people don't recognize that because most honest people won't tell them to their face they're a dunce. Because if you're grown and still got to be convinced about a divine order or a love, then you're definitely not qualified to operate in a civilized world. Somebody need to have you on a leash. Of course, when they do that, we get insulted, don't we? You get the point? Huh? Do you see why certain people, when they travel the world, there's certain people that just run around all free, and a certain group of people, particularly, if they're going to other people's country, they're usually on some boat tour, and they don't let them go too far from the shore or some little hotel. And they get insulted and called racism, don't they? But everybody in the civilized world knows that those such persons do not honor their mothers and fathers. And since they don't, you know they're dangerous to you. Because they'll sell you out for a few pieces of silver. Do you understand? That's how the civilized world see these people. They don't talk to them because we like to burn and fight. And we get hostile very quickly. And so they won't tell you these things. They'll just come here and make economic progress like every other civilized being while we keep on talking about our beliefs and how saved we are, while our babies are dying, our families are falling apart. But we're saved. We're hypocrites. Back to point. The Franciscan Brotherhood, when they overthrew the empire, the Maghrib, they needed a rule of law in order to govern the defeated people, which is why they took the children from the mothers, because the mothers carried the principles of civilization as well as the wealth. Are we clear? Why do you see the tradition of women in the Asiatic and African countries always wearing bands of gold around their neck, around their arms, the jewelry, even in their turbans and their fezzes, etc., the jewelry? Because the wealth of the family was maintained by the women. Why? Matriarchy. Are we understanding this? Are we clear? We clear? If you go into history and are not aware of that, that does not mean that in this mental state that we're in now that we can go to those principles, because we're corrupted. But if you go into history and not know that, you're going to go into history with a wrong frame of mind, wrong frame of reference. Are you clear? The Franciscan Brotherhood established the Christian Black Codes of 1724 to govern the defeated Moors, who are branded Negroes, blacks, and colored, came directly from the church. That was adopted from William Lynch, the master Christian slaveholder from the Atlantis Islands that you call Dominica, Puerto Rico, that area, Haiti, that area. That's the Atlantis Islands. He came up and he spoke to the Christian slaveholders here in North America on how to institute the psychic attacks of their Roman forefathers in order to put these people in check so they could perpetrate this for hundreds of years rather than having to keep fighting them and guarding them with guns and lynching them because they was losing property. So they had to figure out a way for them to become zombie-like and to perpetuate this mentality themselves. So it was important to Christianize them. This is why our people go to church every Sunday. It's in the Black Codes. I don't have them here, and I don't want that to be the subject matter, but I'll show you the direct article. And all these Asiatics should be aware of what governs them, shouldn't they? Don't they always tell you they know Jesus? Don't they always tell you they know God? They know Allah, they know Moses? Don't they always tell you that? Don't they fill these houses every weekend and contribute to the tunes of millions of dollars? They don't even know the rules that govern them. Do you see the problem? Do you see the problem? So logically, they wouldn't know that that birth certificate and that marriage certificates are bonds because they don't deal with those matters because their beliefs don't support it. Doesn't change the reality, does it? Because a person's in denial, does that change reality? Does reality change because a person don't want to deal with reality? Huh? So, if these Asiatics here are all bonded and thereby have no rights, and then accuse the rest of the civilized world of prejudice because their absence of rights, and don't recognize that their birthright has been stolen, is the rest of the world responsible to their ignorance when the birthright is founded in the honor of their own mothers and fathers and recognized by the world only thereby? Are you following me? If you're a European slaveholder, Dutch master, and you've got these Asiatics in chattel bondage, and after 5, 6, 7 generations, they're still transacting business in your family names, would you not file a bond against them? Would you be wrong to?
Makes sense.
Should anything that you buy or sell with the mark or the number of their name be bonded to their corporation and not to anything to your benefit? Is that unjust? If you got a body of people who are not called by their father's names, that keep transacting business in somebody else's name, that keep arguing about what's unfair and what's right and what's wrong, and the world ignores them, Is the world wrong? However, they usually think that the world's wrong, don't they? But it's a lack of knowledge, not a lack of really trying. Because they do a lot of things to try to fix this thing. They got all kinds of organizations to try to fix this thing. They just can't figure out why they can't do it. Are you following me?
That's right.
And when they go into the ancient culture, they'll go into it with a papal mind. The Franciscan Brotherhood's mentality instead of the mentality of their forefathers. Back into the egg. Look back into the hole from which they were dug. Turn your hearts back to the principles of your ancient mothers and fathers if you want to be rescued. Ain't nobody gonna come here with no mystery thing and fix nothing. The truth is gonna set you free and nothing else. And if you don't want to deal with it, you got a right to be enslaved. And the rest of the world got a right to live off your birthright, so don't feel as though you've been and are being mistreated. Because if you don't honor your mothers and your fathers, and the law comes from your mothers and your fathers, and you keep saying it belongs to him, hey, guess what? That's an agreement, isn't it? And that agreement, if you declared out your mouth that the constitutional principles of civilization belong to the Europeans, you waived your rights. And if he claims it, which he's doing anyway, if I'm outside and I'm saying, man, I ain't into all this stuff, man, and I start, this stuff is way in my pockets down, and I start throwing it down, what, people ain't supposed to walk past and pick it up?
Okay.
So if people willing to give up their birthright for a little welfare check or something else, why should they be mad? They sell their birthright for a bowl of red pottage. Because that's what these people did. But they blame the rest of the world, don't they? Because they dishonor their mothers and their fathers. They claim that the Nazarene is a Roman. They put him on the walls as a Roman, knowing he had hair like lamb's wool, skin like Burns grass, just like that. They're the hypocrites. They're the liars. But they accuse the civilized world of mistreating them. That's us, don't we? And when everybody feels sorry for us, don't we? Huh? Well, guess what ain't gonna happen? However, to understand that is to understand why Noble Drew set up the old Canaanite temple to nationalize the people. You understand the process. You understand why it was done. Meaning, it's not in a vacuum. It's a countermeasure to Roman activity in the Western Hemisphere. If the history is presented to you, nationalization makes sense. If nationalization is presented to you without a knowledge of law and history, it can, but doesn't necessarily come to you to be reasonable, for you to really understand why it was done. It must be taken out of the belief stage into the knowledge stage. So giving you the root cause and dismiss the symptoms, not that you dismiss them, but to explain them for what they are. And recognize if you fix the root, you ain't got to worry about the poison ivy riding up and down your house all the time. Stop picking the leaves off because it's going to grow back. Get the root. So if you don't fix the root of the problem, I mean, if you don't reclaim your birthright, you must redo it. No one's going to give it to you. You must reclaim it. And if you don't reclaim it, logically, someone who's living off your virtues is not going to say, well, this is what you do. And you shouldn't expect it. Not that it wouldn't be morally correct or ethically correct. It would be, could be. But since they're colonists, colonists have a mission, don't they? And I think the mission of a colonist is that which a leech is in dirty water, a colonist is in the political arena. His mission is to suck your essence. Why? That's where they get their nourishment from. We call it slavery. Scientists call it blood sucking. Essence draining. Do you understand? So, what are we talking about fixing it? So, we have a covenant with Allah, with nature herself, that we have violated. Part of it is that we have agreed to the papal principles of disrespect for womanhood. The one who brings us all here. And that includes also not a man thing, that's women that disrespected their role in society. Not what he said their role is, what they know their role is in nature. That is to nourish, nurture, cultivate civilization with knowledge, not with emotions. However, she's lost knowledge because we've been held to servitude. So therefore, it is responsible for us to do what? To seek knowledge. And to embrace knowledge, not to fear knowledge. And to apply the wisdom that it brings. To do what? To build. Because when you build with things that are solid and not illusionary, they have a tendency to stay longer, don't they? I think so. Are you following me? Now with the sister with the child, not understanding that birth certificates are bonds, and most people not knowing that they are, usually will approach them with a position of a sense of security or civic duty that, oh, I filed the papers in court, you know, and it's on file, like it's on file for the record, not knowing that it's on file for bond against the child and the mother. Because the condition, politically, the condition of the children are the condition of the mother, according to the Christian black codes. And so, irregardless of the condition or the status of the father, the condition of the mother is considered first. All right? So whatever her status is politically, that is what the corporate state will assure, if they have any hand in it, that the children will be. And so if they have the woman in servitude, the children are slaves. That's why it's important that they file that birth certificate in the county record under corporate auspices so they can place their debt and debts in the world against that bond. But then, for the return of service under feudal law, the nomen, which is a phonicism that's on there, refers to what you think is a person because it sounds like their name, but it is not their name. It is back to the man of straw that they created, just like you create a corporation. It's a fiction. But then when they call the debt, they go and get the body that they claim is attached to it, and when the body does not rebuke it, the bond carries as law. Then they sue you.
It's not Brother Todd. Could you elaborate for the sake of those of us here who are probably not familiar with how, when we go down and we get married in front of this agent of the state, how we have signed over ourselves and all of our progeny to the state?
And see, and this is the deal, is while you have done it, it is unclean. Because it's not conscious that you do it. Now, and this is, and when you see the sister or brother, make sure they know this. The marriage certificate, particularly in the corporate state of New Jersey, and it would be likewise in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the other corporate states, though they may use different title numbers, comes absolutely, in every respect, absolutely under police powers, Title 37. All right? Now, the state agent's job, which is an overseer, is to convince the slaves that he was sent from God, the Creator God, to bring them together in holy union. The people don't know that they're operating for the Holy Roman Empire, who ordained them, all right, and gives them a fee for keeping the niggers from getting restless, which is designated European family property, all right? And when they unite them, it is a contract with the corporation that all issue from the womb of the mother automatically becomes ward, W-A-R-D, write that down, look it up in the law book, of the state. Wards of the state, which is a nice way of saying dependent slave of the state. It's because they say slave, then you get pissed and you want to fight.
Military.
So they used to say ward of the state and you happy, because you don't read anyway. And so, you know, that's how they think of it. So they already know we're not going to, most of us, not going to figure it out. And so the wardship status and the filing goes on while we process every day, and we're busy sporting and playing, and they're filing liens against us constantly. Which, of course, you know is why under auspices, because they have debts against these certificates on these living beings that are listed as chattel. That's why they will get you if you hit their property. They come in the middle of the night, kick your door down and take their property out. And you be told, well, they're my children. Corporate, don't even list them as, that's their corporate property. And usually has their name on it. And you have no standing in law to make any argument. However, we're usually looking at it from a moral and ethical position, like there really are, like we've been ethical, as if we've honored our mothers and fathers. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying to you?
Yes.
Meanwhile, while the ignorance is perpetrated by the state agents who say that there's a separation of church and state, but they're really state agents, overseers, who just sold us to the state, and we agreed, so now they got that marriage certificate, so it's a bond. And they put a bond on that too, just like they put a certain person. That's why they don't want you to take them babies out of the hospital, you understand? And they would say, let me give you a social security number, let me give you the name, give us the name, give us the name, give us the name. And they say, well, we're not going to give you the baby. And you be arguing with them, because they're going to file bonds against that child. See, but if you know that, you're not going to argue with them, you're going to prepare yourself communal-wise, and in your consciousness of how to deal with it. Now you understand the filing of your own documents in your indigenous or aboriginal status. Whether you do it in an organized manner or whether you do it individually, now you understand it. Because guess what if you don't? They're going to file a bond on it. That is routine. That's what bureaucratic slavery is. Like, for instance, like, our people will admit that slavery has been bureaucratized, but challenge them to name it and they can't. They'll just stick with the emotions and talk about racism and talk about unfair, but they can't specifically go to the law. That's why it's important for you to understand what is specifically done so you can specifically counter it. Back to point again. Now do you understand again why Noble Drawling set up nationalization process? How it ties in politically to take the natural being out of the corporate jurisdiction that the European Dutch masters created in corporate status under the straw man to steal your essence under suits on ever-living bonds. And those bonds are passed down to their offspring, just like any other inherited property. So slaves are inherited. This is why this thing has been perpetrated from generation to generation. Not because nobody likes you or don't like your complexion. They got bonds on you. You got to send Susie's child to college while yours don't go. That's it. Again, you understand the nationalization process and why it was set in place. Now it makes sense to you, doesn't it? Not that it didn't before, but it becomes clearer because it's a political act, for the record, to remove you from the artificial person jurisdiction created by European colonists to bureaucratize slavery. Now, hear this again. And remember this and tie all this back to woman. Keep this in mind, and I'm going to go back to where I was left off. Women run all the institutions, don't they? Hospitals, who's majority run them? Women. Churches, who's majority run them? Women. Mosques, synagogues, who's majority run them? Schools, who's majority run them? Nurses, who's majority nurses? Huh? Little clubs, stuff going in the community, who's majority run them? Raising your children, who the majority runs it? How come we have so many women with children that are struggling to survive, that's living in poverty? Does that sound religious to you? Yes, it is religious. It's what they've been getting called religion, which is a fraud. And no one has the guts to tell the truth about what's going on, because they're usually part of that hypocrisy. And then accusing Jesus, Allah, and Moses of that crap. Prophet Muhammad has nothing to, it has no association with Allah whatsoever. None of that crap. However, if you tell that truth, most of the people want to lynch you. But the conditions out there tells you what the truth is. But because they're hypocrites, they won't deal with it. But they always talk about solving problems. Until you are willing to deal with the truth, you're not solving anything. Now, let's go back to mothers. So if you stop supporting institutions that don't support you, and if they don't support you, they can't support me, because I'm your husband, your boyfriend, your brother, and your son, no matter what my age. We just get bigger, but we do stay boys. You understand? And how can we protect you if you support the institutions that take us from you? Because you make them all run. But part of it is because you're subjugated and you figure, well, if you don't, you can't take care of your family. That they've broken up already. You're halfway trying to survive now. You see it's a catch-22? Not exactly, it just appears that way. Do you understand? So you've got to look at this thing the same way the DAR did. The same way the DAR set up the isolation codes that set up the Knights of Columbus, Ku Klux Klan, white community, etc., and overthrew the Moorish Empire is the same way you got to take it back. Starting with never, and teach this to every woman that you know, give your child a European name. If you do, you're sealing their fate for a lot of crap that you don't know is getting ready to come down the pipe. Do not let your child come here and take a breath of air on this earth and give that child a European name. And if somebody have tagged you with it, you give them a free national name anyway. So they don't have a bond on a free national name, because then internationally they are subject to international law and they can't operate with the straw man using an Asiatic name. They have to have a European name. That's why they always ask you, what is your Christian name? I mean, what name did the Christians put on you through your grandmother that they enslaved? Because that's the bond name. It's a wardship name. It is never your name. That is no different than a number or a mark for an account against you for their benefit. And that's what is used. So you want to look at mothers. When you get into organizations with other women and you start talking about community problems, you're going to talk about women coming together and dealing organizationally with fundamental principles of structuring forms and dealing with birth record forms coming from you and no longer using the corporate state forms. And talking about the subject matters of how to do it. That's what you should be discussing, not how to march. Because anything that you seek, you will find. Meaning that all things will not be said at this time, but I will tell you enough that you can become operative. Islam.
Well, I guess you would have answered my question. I was going to ask, how would one go about filing the proper documentation?
The first thing that you do, let me give you another instance so that you can have an idea of how to start fixing things. Not that other people aren't doing this, because other people are working to fix things too. When Noble Drew Ali set up the old Canaanite Temple, Moorish Science Temple, Moorish Holy Temple of Science, etc., Great Seal, Moorish Divine National Movement of the World, etc., they are actually outposts or regent. They are regencies. They are regent branches of government. It was supposed to be done within these orders. It was not done. Does not mean that it cannot be done. It was not done, and so you would think in your mind, what do we do? It was done. It was corrupted. That's all. Do you understand? In other words, it was a social political platform that was incorporated within this government to redeem you, socially, politically, economically, industrially. Do you understand? And teach those things necessary to make you better citizens. However, that it had not been done has given people a wrong concept of the movement itself. And so people would view it as a religious sect, not knowing it has everything to do with their birthright and has nothing at all to do with what they believe or don't believe. They could be atheists and they're still Moors. And that birthright still belongs to them. But because it wasn't presented to them properly, they have a misunderstanding and they agree to give up their birthright because they think they're protecting their beliefs. You see the problem? This is what the European has lived on and depended on and has been secure with. And only you can reclaim the Holy Grail. Only you. He may possess it. It is not his. And he does not have the strength to keep it as it appears that he does, because he has no power except what you give him.
Absolutely.
So you agree to that jurisdiction, and he claims it, and files against you on it. But you need to know, outside of emotions, but by fact of due processes of law and color of law, how it is done so that you yourself, even without the assistance of someone that knows legal processes, can do it, because law is based in common sense. Did you know that? Now people say, you know, yeah, but I don't understand law. Did you know law is based in common sense? That's why it's called common law. It does not abridge your common senses. And if it does, it's usually color. Now you understand why they called us colored people? And our people thought it meant complexion, didn't they? It means faking people. Faking like they're human. The issue in the battle, brother, we're going to talk on 2 points here. That's dealing with the world's problems, is the problem of the blending of the nigger and the human. It was not done for the purpose of creating a problem. It was done for the purpose of solving a problem. However, when you mess with nature, problems come. You just got to deal with them. When the Abo declared themselves God, it kind of put a crimp in the gears. You get the point? Anything that thinks and anything that lives wants to live.
Explain what is the nigger.
The nigger is the people that the people read about in the books called Romans and Europeans. The ignorant call them white men. As a matter of fact, most of the ignorant think that they themselves are niggers, which they are not. The ignorant think that nigger is some nation in Africa, Kemet on the other side. Civilized world knows that they're uncivilized, which is why they believe that fiction. Because the niggers told them that and traded places with them and have their seat of power. Stole their birthright. So the humans think they're niggers, and the niggers are claiming to be white people, which is a status, not a complexion. Are we clear again? That's the complexity of the political social arena that they're dealing with, which is why the humans have difficulty solving their social, economic, spiritual problems. Because their concepts about what's going on is wrong. And if you talk to most of them, they will start telling you what their beliefs are. Very few will start giving you facts, knowledge, scientific data. They don't have it. They don't deal with such matters. It's above them or below them or something. But they don't believe that, so they don't deal with facts. They just deal with emotions. And everybody else makes money off them, lives off them, but they're saved though. You see the problem? Huh? They're destroyed for lack of knowledge, but they think their beliefs is equal to knowledge. See what the problem is? Getting over that mountain with them? This is what makes it difficult for other Asiatics and Africans from other parts of the world to come help civilize these people and get them out of this nigger problem that they themselves keep perpetrating on the civilized world. Because they're believers. They won't grow up. Refuse to grow up. Refuse to give back to them Romans that which is theirs, that Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed. So they want to keep Caesar's game, but they don't want Caesar to oppress them. Well, guess what? It don't exactly go together like that. They don't want to honor their mothers and fathers, that's their business. But they have no right to talk about rights, because rights don't exist with such beings. You understand? Now, back to make it very clear. Negro Yavera Arebo, troglodyte nigger, is the black chimpanzee monkey. Those are the scientific names for that anthropoid, which proliferates near mostly the Amazon River and Rio Negro, near Manaus, United States of America, Brazil. It is that anthropoid which the ancient Moabites, dealing with technology in the Pyramid of the Sun in the Yucatan, Mexico, and did the experiments in Patagonia, which is Argentina, that brought about that hybrid that you call Romans, or the ruddy blonde, that ignorant people call white man, who is not indigenous to the planet, which is why they have difficulty living under the sun, which seeks to kill them. We're clear. They have no land, except we assented Albion to them, which is called land of the Angles, England. Now you understand what Anglican church is? Anglo-Saxon. All right. You understand? Now they were first near the equator, but because the sun was killing them at such a large rate, we gathered together the blue eyes that you hear in the Holy Quran, and we gathered up all the blue eyes. That's it. We gathered them up and took them to the island of the fog, or Patmos, the land of the Angles, and placed their lepers behind the rock until their lesions were all white. Do you understand? Now you understand the, how would you say, the tradition of the myth about the leprechaun? Now you understand St. Patrick's Day, Tag Day, running the Moors out of Ireland. Oh, four-leaf clover, the zodiac, four corners, the four gates. Mummers Parade right here in Philadelphia, 32-degree masonry. 2 fingers across the lip like this. Mum is the word. And they would paint their face in blackface. And they'd march from 6th and Moore Street, South Philadelphia in the South Gate, and they'd go north to the North Gate, past the battleground where City Hall sits, and if you look at that building, look at the architecture, it's Moorish architecture. And then the parade would end at number 1, northeast corner, Broad Street, the Masonic Hall, Masonic Lodge. See how they tell you to your face, but they know you won't pick it up? Do you understand? Huh? It's not hidden, it's in your face, but they know you don't pay attention to things. And then they put your sovereign seal right on the dollar bill, that great Trinity pyramid. And no one speaks under it, but it is the great seal. And if you turn it upside down, the shadow will make a 7. 7 seal. Take that dollar bill, turn it upside down, and watch the shadow. You notice that the shadow goes underneath the pyramid too? And then it comes up to that acacia bush, and you turn it upside down, and it's a 7. Circle 7. That's the 7th seal, right in your face. All Masons know it, all Jesuits know it, all Knights of Columbus know it, all Knights Templars know it, all Camellia know it. Everybody know it, but those who lost their birthright, because they think they Negro, Black, and Colton, whatever they are next year, this year, next month, tomorrow. 2 hours from now, whatever. You see it, but you can't tell them nothing because they're saved. But the babies are dying. But they're saved though. Do you understand the problem? So therefore, the information must be given in a way that they can comprehend it, in a way that they can use it, that they can function with it, actually, to demonstrate, so they can take strength in it. and reclaim their birthright, because no one can do it for them. You can only claim your own sovereignty. No one can make you honor your mothers and your fathers. They can tell you anything. You know, do what you want to do. You got free will. Whosoever will. You don't want it, that's fine, but don't complain. That's all. Just sit back, be a good nigger, and pay them Romans those tithes. It's called Roman tax. That's what tithes are. Ain't got nothing to do with the prophets. That's Valerius, the Roman emperor, who founded the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed, which is called in these days Christianity. And it had nothing to do with the Nazarene at all. Period. The murderers of the Nazarene made their political creed and tagged the Nazarene's name to it, altered his name, and the world been following the Romans ever since. I'm talking about the devil did this. Yeah, right? He did to the South. That's why the rest of the civilized world don't feel sorry for us. That's why they won't come and tell you these things. Because usually if they tell them the truth, we want to fight them. We'll burn their house down and stuff. We're talking about, I hope your children go down on 295 at lunchtime and play. Because you ain't saved. I don't know if I can talk to you. And so they just set up shop like everybody else, put a glass between them and these savages, and live good like every other civilized human being. Then we get jealous instead of studying and learning. And tell me it's not true. It's true. It's true. Anyway, back to Pura. The area of land that's called India is Pura. The Moors named it Hindustan. That's where the name Hindi came from, Indian came from, which is why you will find in Colombo's, that's Cristofero Colombo's, not Christopher Columbus. Cristofero Colombo's records, ship logs, that when they came here to the Atlantis Islands, the area that you call Dominica, etc., etc., that they found the same people they found in Hindi, and they called them Hindis, Voodoos, Indians. Indians and Moors are written in history as one and the same, interchangeable. So once you get past 1800, you'll see Indian, Moor, and African used synonymously. Not those people and then the other people, synonymously. It is not until later when they were reconstructing history that they start separating and dividing them, confusing you so that you would not know your social, political tie and authority in the land that your feet are resting upon. And by you denying it, he claims it. And by you using his name, he claims your possession through you using his name, because name denotes possession. That's why they put the European family names on the fallen Moors. For political, corporate reasons, not because they weren't being nice guys. Are we clear? So, this is back to what I was saying to you before. The term Indian, used, designated to the tribes here, come from that false, or you can call it a misassumption, it wasn't exactly that. But I predicated on Colombo's ship logs, when he called the people the same people he saw in Hindustan. So the Indians, they're just like them. They couldn't even make a distinction.